Welcome to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. We appreciate you being here. We're going to talk a little about traveling solo today. I want to start, though, by acknowledging that we are meeting on the ancestral homelands of the Puget Sound Coast Salish people, the Suquamish tribe, the people of the Clear Saltwater, who are our neighbors to the north. We honor them and are learning from their stewardship of these lands and waters. Also, I'd like to mention that Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island is a sponsor of Something to Talk About. They offer assisted and independent living and memory care upon Rolling Bay. To learn more, call 206-594-1010. Go on their website, fieldstonecommunities.com, or come by for a tour. Also ask about day stay and respite care programs. So today we have a couple of folks here who are going to help us talk a little bit about traveling solo. We have Jeannette Franks and Jamie Mittet. Jeannette has been an intrepid traveler who's been going abroad since 1965. She was only 15 at that point. She's traveled as a starving student backpacker, a Peace Corps volunteer. She's taken many volunteer service trips, and now occasionally a luxury of splurges, such as an overseas adventure travel and Earth Watch. That's quite a lot of traveling you've been doing, Jeannette. Hello, Jeannette. Jeannette is having a little problem with her Wi-Fi. I don't see her there.
Thank you, Reed, and I apologize, my Wi-Fi.
So maybe we'll just move ahead. Jamie Mittet, who was very active before she became a lawyer, she worked for United Airlines, right, Jamie?
That's right.
And that got you with a travel bug that you have been feeding for a while.
Absolutely.
So, well, Jennifer, it looks like Jeannette might be back. I don't know if Jeannette, you might want to start with a couple of things you've learned over the years.
Well, thank you, Reed. I apologize for the Wi-Fi. And thank you for your patience, and Reed. And hi, Tom. Hi, everybody. So I'll just do a little brief introduction of a sort. This was Dorothy Foster's idea, and for that, I thank her. And she will be a speaker at our seminar on May 18th, which is called A Fresh Look at Death. So I wanted to get that on everybody's calendar. And if you ever wanted to go to Paris, for heaven's sakes, go now. I mean, if there's someplace you wanted to go, as an older person, do not keep putting it off. And you may say, I don't have anyone to go with me, or I don't want to go on one of those big groups. Well, if you go somewhere, you'll be with other people at a time and place that they also wanted to be there. But I think it is good to travel with a purpose, whether it is learning a language or learning a new skill, like studying architecture or archaeology, or volunteering. There are a great many wonderful volunteer vacations all over the world. I've done everything from archaeology in Tuscany, which was with Earthwatch and was
Okay, Jeannette, we're losing you there.
You can do travel there. Got one in New York that's, I beg your pardon?
We lost you there for a little bit. You were saying that you make a budget. You're saying that you make a budget at the beginning of the year.
Yes, and decide how much you're going to spend on travel. And there are ways to cut corners. For example, I have stayed in hostels. They don't call them youth hostels anymore. They're international hostels. And for example, there's one in New York that's very nice. It's in a historic building. It's immaculate, and it's kitty corner from Central Park. And it's cheap. And there's full kitchens to prepare your own food. And it's a great place to meet people, although there are a lot of young people there, and it can be noisy. And I no longer will sleep in the top bunk bed, but I can negotiate the bottom bunk. You know, you kind of pull rank with your gray badge of courage. So I want to encourage people to be brave, and if you really want to go somewhere, go there.
Yeah. Okay, Jamie, I'm wondering if you might be able to tell us a little bit about some of the things that you have chosen to do before as a traveler. Have
Okay,
you done
yeah, yeah, I will. I'm going to give you sort of a nuts and bolts. I have a little bit of a different approach. If you're traveling solo or with a friend, which is, I usually travel with a friend, you're traveling without the umbrella of a tour company or a tour guide who's going to take care of all the logistics of travel. And that can be a lot of fun. It can be freeing. It can give you a lot of flexibility, but it can also be challenging. So I'm just have sort of a nuts and bolts thing of things people might want to consider beginning. If you don't have a KTN or a global entry pass, you might think of getting one. Now, a KTN number, it's a known traveler number, gives you automatic pre-check. And if you're only going to be traveling within the United States, that's good. But if you think you're going to go to Europe or any country out of the United States, you should get a global entry card, because that really expedites you going through customs and immigrations coming back into the United States. Now, the KTN, you get them all through TSA, and you have to apply for them, and it takes longer to get the global entry card. The KTN number is $85. The global entry is $100. But if you're going to be traveling overseas, get the global entry, because the KTN's included within that. So you're paying basically the $100 for the both, and that's going to go up this year. It's well worth getting. The other thing to consider is travel insurance if you're traveling alone. I never used to think about that when I was younger, but as I've traveled older, I get it. And I get it mainly so that I have medical evacuation, that if anything happens to you overseas, you can be assured that you will have the ability to get yourself in an airplane and get home. So, and you can get it through a lot of different insurance companies. I've used Travel Guard, and I try to get $1 million on the medevac. So you have to look at your policy. If you do that, take a copy of that policy and leave it with somebody. Leave it with a spouse, a friend, or somebody that has that too, and take a copy so that you've got it yourself when you're traveling. The other thing I would do is, and a friend just told me about this recently, and I've not done this, is when you're traveling alone, be sure to have something on you that has a phone number of a contact, whether it's your spouse, whether it's a friend or a relative in the United States, that if anything happened to you and you had an accident, you would have that information, that somebody knows where to call, and that person then can start taking care of leave your copy of your insurance with that person too. So the other thing is, take down, copy all of your credit cards that you're taking with you, and copy your passport. Either do it digitally or do a hard copy, or both. I usually like to have a hard copy with me because I'm not the best with technology. And if I can't access my phone, I still want to have that information with you. The other thing, and I really can't stress this enough if you're traveling these days, is to pack light. You really want to travel with one small suitcase. I went for 6 weeks to Croatia with a friend, and we traveled with a 20-inch Rick Steves carry-on bag and a lightweight backpack. And the importance of this is most countries outside, we're the only ones that I know of that has an Americans with Disabilities Act. Overseas, you're not going to have an equivalent of that. So you are going to be lugging that suitcase with you all the time. And trust me, you're going to be going up and down stairs with it. And sometimes these stairs are slippery rock stairs carved into the side of a wall without any railings, or you're going to be bumping it over cobblestones. So you really need to pack light. And keep in mind, somebody mentioned to me, you don't need all of the clothes that you think you're gonna need. You end up wearing the same thing anyway. And you are there to see things, you're not there to be seen. So keep that in mind. I can't stress that enough. The Rick Steve has classes on how to pack. You might consider vacuum bags for packing your clothes in. There's just a lot of ways you can cut down and save space, but really make it your priority. Sorry, my mouth is getting dry. Okay, so this, like I say, is a shotgun. The other thing to think of before you go is how are you going to communicate when you're over there? So you can contact your phone company and get a plan to put on your phone before you go, so that most of them give you so many texts, so many phone calls, and so many emails. You can, and the different phone companies have different plans. T-Mobile, I believe, actually, in your own, when you're signed up with them, you automatically get an international plan. I have Verizon and you don't. So if you don't want to do that, I mean, you can get by without doing it. But for the most of your communication apps like WhatsApp or Google Voice Number, you're going to need, or even with iPhone to iPhone doing FaceTime, you're going to need to be on Wi-Fi. So you have to think about that, whether or not you want to have the ability to make a call without being on Wi-Fi. If you choose not to do that, and Wi-Fi, when you're traveling around, keep in mind that as much as McDonald's, it's the bane of your existence, seeing it all over the world. It's an easy place to go into to use the Wi-Fi or to go to the bathroom. Same with Starbucks. Both of those places have access to toilets, and they're usually clean toilets. So other than that, starting off, when you decide where you want to go, research. If you're on your own, just sit down and research what you want to do there. Rick Steve's books, you can go to the library or just go to a bookstore and browse through them. They give you a lot of information in the beginning about tipping in different countries, transportation in this particular place that you're going to, different ideas about whether or not it's worth it for you to get a pass, because a lot of cities have passes that you can get for museums or tourist attractions, so that you don't have to wait in line. Some of them are worth it, some of them aren't, depending on what you want to do. But those Rick Steve books give you a lot of information. They also have in the beginning, they'll tell you if you only have 2 days in a city, or 3 days, or 4 days. They'll lay out what are the best things to see in 2 days. If you have 3 days, what you should do or where you can go. And it really does help focus you and get you to where you thought, oh, okay, I can do that. Another resource aside from the books is there's a website. It's called Wiki Travel, WIKI. And if you go on that, it actually gives you a lot of information about the city that you're going to. I would suggest that you download before you go maps and transportation maps showing you how to get from the airport or the train station to the hotel or the Airbnb, wherever you're going to stay, so that you've got that handy instead of getting to the airport and running around trying to find out from people. Try to do all of that research ahead of time. When you make reservations, check to make sure if you're traveling within Europe, a lot of the small airlines, aside from having very stringent baggage limitations, that's hence, again, carry with one small bag. There are a lot of outlying airports. The same with the train stations. If you're making reservations, from one city to the other by the train, make sure you know what train station you're coming into, because a lot of times when I've been traveling, I've thought I was coming into a train station that was right close to downtown. And in fact, it wasn't. It was one that was out in the suburbs, and it was just a hassle getting into town. So these are things that you don't think about, but just keep in mind that you check Because especially in London, there are like 4 airports that are scattered around, and some of them are very hard to get back and forth from. So check that out. And you might want to download the city maps and transportation maps before you get to a particular city. Once you're at the hotel, you'll be on Wi-Fi and you can start doing that, so that when you're out and about, if you don't have access to Wi-Fi, you'll have something downloaded on your phone that you can look at. Let's see. TripIt, there's an app called TripIt that organizes your trip for you. You know, it'll start collecting, you know, all of your information and putting it in an organized manner. And keeping, you know, having a itinerary set up. I'm not very good at doing this, so this is, don't do what I do, but if you set up an itinerary and have it written out, it's so much easier for you, because then you'll have it to look at. You're just not constantly hunting back and forth for what time is my train, what time is my flight. And some of the things to consider when you're in a city, if you, like Jeannette says, you know, if you want to meet people, there are tours. It's tours by locals. Most cities have that. You can do walking tours, or you can hire locals to try to take you around to sightsee. It gives you a better insight into the city. The other thing is, if you belong to a professional organization, like for me as a lawyer, or anybody, if you have some sort of club that you belong to, you may want to try to contact before you leave similar organizations in the country or city that you're going to, and set up a contact with somebody, because that way, like for me, I could have them take me to see the courts in a particular city and perhaps watch a trial, what you know, which I've done. But it, you know, it just gives you sort of a contact if you're traveling on your own. Or cooking, if you're interested in cooking, or there's just a lot of things that you can research ahead of time, what might be available in the city that you can do and make contacts, so that you might have somebody that you can talk to, or that can give you information about the city that you're in. The other thing that I wanted to say is, rather than just staying in a hotel or an Airbnb, you can do, there are organizations that do house exchanges. And I've known people that have done that on a routine basis. You pick a country, you pick a city or wherever, and you exchange houses with the individual there. And also, they'll also leave a car, so you often have a car. And for a lot of people, especially people on Bainbridge, which is a place that people would want to come to, you know, that's something to think of. There's also another organization that's called Trusted House Sitters. So you can go on and check and say, I did this last year when I was going to Scotland. It didn't work out for me because I changed my plans, but I went on and I looked in Scotland around Edinburgh. And, you know, there was a place, a little town that I wanted to go to anyway. And somebody there was looking for somebody to house sit for a week, you know, and take care of their dog or cat, whatever. You know, and sometimes that really works out well for you, because I've known people that have done that all over the world and have loved it. There are also places that you can go if somebody has a vineyard or a farm. They'll advertise that they want people to come and help them and work, so you can sort of combine your vacation, you know, with doing some project, working in the vineyard or working on the farm, and, you know, something to sort of ease the loneliness if you're traveling alone, and it gets you.
And the other, you know, the other thing that Jeannette was talking about in terms of getting involved in a volunteer activity is you'll start to sort of experience the locale in a different way.
And I did that with my friend. We went to Costa Rica and worked with a university group that was monitoring the turtles on the beaches. So we would get up at midnight and be out on the beach, lying on the sand. So one person was counting the eggs as the turtle dug their hole and laid their eggs, and how many eggs. And And then when the little ones, when they hatched, watching them, monitoring them doing their little trip down to the beach. It was
An
a lot of
experience.
fun.
Yeah, an experience you'll
However,
never forget.
when you do things like that, most of the people that are on those programs are young. So my friend and I, of course, were by far the oldest people doing it. But there are lots of opportunities like that in Thailand, north of Bangkok, in a place called Chiang Mai. Outside of there is an elephant refuge. And I've known people that have gone there and worked there for a while, taking care of the elephants. There's many, many opportunities for that. And that it's nice to combine something like that. And there are good organizations out there if you don't want to travel alone. There's Road Scholar, which is a great group. There's Overseas Adventure. There's an outfit in Seattle called Wander Tours. And the woman who used to have the travel store on Bainbridge uses them a lot. I've never used them. So, but if she does, I'm assuming that it's a really good tour. And I think a lot of the things the Wander Tour does is like hiking and biking. And that's another thing. My friend and I did hiking in Ireland, hiking in Scotland, hiking on the Camino. In addition to, just doing sightseeing. So you can plan your vacation around doing something fun like that. And then, you're in the area, and then you use the rest of your time to travel around and sightsee. So that's really all. The other thing I wanted to say is put on your phone a app that translates, languages for you, because that'll really help. It's just a big help to be able to. You can have somebody speak into it and it'll translate. Jeanette wants to say something.
Yeah. Jeanette,
Go ahead,
you'll
Jeanette.
unmute. There you go.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Jamie. I think it is really important to start studying the language before you leave.
Yeah.
And even if all you learn are the niceties, good morning, please,
Exactly.
thank you. You can learn, I always like to at least learn one word a day, because then by the end of 3 weeks, you've got a vocabulary. You can have a simple conversation, but not just using an app, but really memorize some basic greetings and polite pleasantries is really important. And in many cultures, from Mexico to Greece to France, people are I don't know how to say this politically correctly, but people are often more polite in other countries. You don't just walk into the drugstore and say,
No.
where are the cough drops?
You say
You walk
hello,
into the
good
drugstore
morning.
and you say,
Yeah.
good morning, how are
Right.
you? And you make it more of a
Yeah.
polite social transaction.
That's so
And
important.
I think it's important to know our library has a huge collection of travel books, both stories about people who are living in another country or written by Americans in another country, or, histories of different countries, but then also travel guides, because usually you don't want to take a 2-pound travel guide with you.
No.
And you can do some of that online with
I
Kindle.
take snapshots of pictures of things in the book that I want to have with me. You don't want to waste your time carrying the book.
And I think it's important not to be fearful. It always is ironic to me that most people consider the US a much more dangerous place to travel than most places in Europe. I also would encourage people to try and track down and nurture some relationships with people who are there. So, if you're from Ireland, track down your third cousins. If you're from Scotland, try and figure out where you can go to a family graveyard where the Stuarts are, things like that, that give you a more personal connection. Or if you have friends overseas, that's a reason to choose a destination. Like if you want to go to Germany, we've always had international students and visited them in every country from the Netherlands to Sierra Leone. So nurturing those relationships with people overseas, and it makes it so much more fun. And be a willing host to international people. In your home here on Bainbridge, the University of Washington has quite a number of programs. My late husband and I hosted an international student every year. My student this year is from Pakistan. So that's another way to connect with people all over the world and stay in touch with your friendships that you've made with people who live elsewhere.
Yeah, I've never done that, but I've known people that have, and it is very rewarding. But
It is
we're very
wonderful.
fortunate with speaking English that so many people speak English that we seem to often take it for granted. But it is important to at least be able to say initially, good morning, good afternoon, and ask, do you speak English in the language, rather than just assuming that everybody does. It's just common courtesy. So it's good to have that on the app on your phone. It helps.
Yeah.
There's another app I think that's really helpful. It's called M Passport. And it directs you to English-speaking doctors, hospitals, in the area that you're in case you need it. It also gives you local names for prescriptions, rather than you having to go into and usually it's not a problem if you're in a large city, because like I say, we're very fortunate that most people speak English. But I've been in situations where they don't, and trying to explain what you need from a drugstore because you don't know the word that they use can be challenging. So I'd never heard of this app before, but I'm going to download it now. I think it's handy to have, especially for older people traveling, because you just never know what's going to happen. So
I also suggest that people carry antibiotics. I met with the travel nurse because I leave in a couple of weeks for North Africa. And so to have some antibiotics on hand, to take COVID tests, take masks with you, and be thoughtful.
Make sure you take all of your medications with you. And this seems to be just, very obvious, but you'd be surprised at how many people forget to do this. Do not pack them in your suitcase. That if you're checking your suitcase in, if there's medications that you are taking, be sure you carry them with you at all times. Because if your suitcase gets lost and you don't have them, you're in trouble. And I get diverticulitis at times, so I always get a antibiotic prescription to take with me just in case I have a flare up when I'm traveling. Or if you have any situation like that where you think you may possibly have something happen, just be sure to just take it with you. You can turn it back in when you come back if you don't need it.
Lois, you have a question for this group?
Well, I was just going to say that you probably all know this, but the clinic on the island has a travel clinic.
Nurse, yeah.
And you can, before you go anywhere, you can call and even do a video appointment with them. And they'll give you, whatever information you need to have about the situation in the country, what shots, if any, that you need, and give you prescriptions for a Z-Pack or, things that you might need along the way. So
Absolutely.
What were you talking about, Lois? What's the name of it?
It's a clinic at Virginia Mason.
Virginia Mason Clinic has a travel nurse.
You just call the clinic and say you need an appointment with the travel clinic, and they'll set you up.
I'm wondering if both Jeannette and Jamie talked a little bit about spending some time, after, maybe if you're on a tour or you're doing a volunteer effort, when you're in the country, you're already there. And Jamie, you mentioned the idea of looking for local tours. Have you done that? And any guidelines on sort of sussing out what might be a good place to look for somebody to show you around where you are?
Once you're there, I mean, you just use your phone for research. Just go online and whatever it is you're looking for. I mean, you usually can find information. If you're looking for a local tour, just put that in, or if you wherever. Does somebody want to?
Well, Lois, I think that
I've used Viator to great success all over the world. And
I
they're,
didn't hear what you said, Lois. You used
it's
what?
a Viator, Viator.
Yeah, it's a good, yes, that's a good app.
And the other thing that I do when I get to a new place, and if I'm by myself for a few days, I'll do the hop on, hop off bus to orient myself.
Absolutely. I do that too. Every city that I go to, that's what I do first. Is that bus, and then that kind of orients you and you can see what you want to, if there are things that you want to then the next time stop and visit and stay longer. That's a very good one.
The other thing that I do is I download a currency exchange app so that you can quickly convert whatever
Right.
local currency to US dollars, and that's kind of an easy thing to do.
And
The other thing I
download the
wanted,
city maps and the subway maps, metro maps, so that you have it handy for
the other thing
navigating.
I wanted to mention was for trip insurance, if you're planning to take more than one trip a year, you can get an annual policy, and it's a lot cheaper than getting individual policies for each trip.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, you just have to check with the whatever company that you're wanting to use. There are a lot of different options, and the insurance isn't that expensive. It's not bad at all.
I think I paid, I don't know, somewhere around $400 or $500 for an annual policy, and it covers not just international, but like I go to Arizona every couple of months, and it covers those trips. Kind of travel at all is included in the annual policy.
Yeah, and I looked into some of those too. My main thing, like I said, when I'm looking at those insurance policies, I don't care about much. I'm not that concerned about trip cancellation, whatever, anything that I can afford to absorb. And it's nice to have, but I don't care that much. But I want that medical evacuation now. I want to be sure that that's there, and if I need it, so far, touch wood, haven't needed it. But I want to know that if anything drastic happened, I would have the ability to get home. So, and it just doesn't travel. I use Travel Guard, and they're pretty good. But AAA, AAA is a good
I have an
resource.
Allianz policy, but also if you charge your trip with your credit card, a lot of the major credit cards have some level
They have some, right.
of trip insurance as well.
Yeah, the Costco City Card, if you're renting a car, they cover insurance.
You have to
Credit
rent
cards
your car
don't.
through Costco?
No, you don't, because it's just the city card that is your Costco card also. It is Citibank.
Okay.
And
thanks.
they do cover your insurance, but most insurance companies don't for overseas rental of cars. Because my friend and I we rented a car in Scotland and in Ireland and Spain. We rented one in South Africa. We did not get the insurance at the counter because it doubles the cost of your car rental.
Yeah.
But we carried a letter with us saying that we were covered.
Tom?
Yeah,
And if you're thinking of renting a car, check for each country that you're in, car rental, because there's age limitations.
yeah,
I'm starting to push on now, so.
I don't think you can rent after 85.
I think 80 in most
Yeah.
places.
No,
They cut it off.
have to worry.
Some countries do 75.
But and yeah, I think you have to be 25, if you're a male. But
Yeah, I don't worry about that.
yeah, insurance was a hassle. I ran into that in Ireland, which you would think it wouldn't be a problem, but getting they wanted proof of insurance, and
Yeah, and that's why I carry that
Company-
letter with me
the
from
company I
Citibank.
had it, but to get it
Yeah.
processed and over there would cost a fortune. I finally ended up paying the exorbitant price they wanted.
Well, in Ireland they have more tourists having car accidents in their car than most places. When you'll know driving there,
Oh,
the
yeah,
roads are
they're narrow.
so narrow.
Yeah.
and you run up against these these stone walls right at the edge of the road. And that
there's
was the only place that I've ever rented a car in where there's a camera in the glove box so that you could take pictures of the accident, because they had so many accidents. Our first place that we stopped at, the little B&B that we were at, there was a woman with her 2 young children. She was American and they were traveling around, and she'd already had an accident with the car. She'd already scraped the whole side of her car. It's challenging driving there. I did not do the driving. My friend did the driving. I was the navigator, but
So-
it's hard.
Jamie, you mentioned having a letter. Where did you get the letter?
Citibank, I called the company and to make sure that they were still doing that. And they said yes, and I said, could you please send me a letter saying that this is, yeah, and then they do.
And so that's it. When you get there, you use your city card to pay for the rental?
Right. Mhm. Yeah.
you know, you need to check on the credit card situation. I was fishing up in Canada, and luckily I had 2 cards. The one card they wouldn't take. You know, they just wouldn't do it in Canada. But the other thing I was going to mention was you can get, you can exchange your money in your bank here. It takes a little time, but it's usually cheaper than doing it, once you're overseas.
I've never found that it's particularly cheaper, but I always like to take some, if it's possible, to have some local currency with me when I first get
Yeah.
to a place. Just even if it's just a little bit, so that I've got that. And then I use ATMs to get money as I go along. But I would agree, that's a good point, Tom, at least have 2 cards with you, because you never can tell. And if you use an ATM, I mean, obviously, I've used ATMs in situations where I was a little worried about using it, but I needed to get the money. But if you can, it's best to go to a bank and go when the bank is open. Because of my friend at one point, when she was traveling alone, the machine took her card and she didn't get it back. And it was on a weekend. So, she had to wait until the Monday to the bank opened so that she could go in, and she got her card back. But still, in the meantime, if you only have 1 card, you're out of luck.
Did you have something you wanted to say?
Who?
Well,
Well, I want to mention money, and Tom, go ahead first, but then I'll follow Tom, okay?
Okay, I just wanted to say on your credit card, you should tell your credit card company that you're traveling and where, because that's why they didn't honor mine. I was in Canada
Yeah,
and I had told them, and they didn't know whether it was legitimate or not.
it's a good point.
So you tell them
Yeah.
you're traveling. That's good.
It is important to carry cash as well. And most countries, because they often use machines to count the cash, they want clean bills. You can use like $50 bills and $10 bills, US currency, many places in the world. And sometimes it's more valuable than the local currency. But usually they don't want your kind of crumpled up, icky money, because it won't go through the machine. And also, it's not that prudent to carry $100 bills, because in many places there's some concern about counterfeiting, and counterfeiting $100 bills is really popular, but not so much $50 bills. So I always carry, quite a bit of American currency in all different denominations, as well as more than 1 credit card. There might be a reason why, your Chase gets shut down, but some other bank is still operating. And also debit cards. Most cash machines actually take debit cards. You get charged a lot more money if you use your credit card. And you can actually, if you get cash through your debit card and there's no fees, then the cash you're using, you can buy things more cheaply with either the local cash or US cash than take than giving somebody a credit card. Like if you're buying, whether it's Starbucks or the jewelry store, then they would prefer cash often. You just get a better deal. And when you're bargaining, oh, wherever you go, I mean, even France, people bargain, don't necessarily pay the first price that you are told. All over the world, people, it's a conversation and it's an exchange, and you can get, so if you say, well, and I can pay cash, then you get a better deal.
I would just like to add this discussion about carrying American cash. I was just in India, and they would not accept any US money that was older than 2017. So I had brought a stack of really clean bills of all denominations, but they were, if you look on the currency, it's dated 2009, nobody would take it. It had to be within the last, 5 or 6 years. So that was new to me. And the other thing was you could not get India currency, rupees, and any bank here in the States. And that's because you're not allowed to bring rupees into the country or take rupees out of the country, which was pretty interesting. That I had not experienced that before.
That shows that it's important to check each country that you're going to see what the situation is. When I was in Scotland, and I mean, I am from Scotland, and I have a lot of pounds that were older that I'd had for a while. I really had a hard time using them because they changed and they had updated or printed new notes, and I guess there was a grace period that they allowed people to use old ones, but of course I wasn't there, so I didn't know about it. And I went from bank to bank, and they were going, oh no, we don't use these. I'm going, this is legal tender. I mean, what is wrong here? But finally, one teller said, sometimes our little post offices will take the currency, and there was a little post office right close to where I was staying, and I went in and I said, can I cash these here? And she said, sure, if you buy something. So I bought a little knick-knack or something and was able to cash some of my money, but I've still got some at home that I probably won't be able to use. So it's a good thought with different places because they change their currency. Sometimes you can't do anything about that.
When you're talking about Scotland and Ireland, I've never been to Scotland, but Ireland, the little town where we go, they don't have a bank. They come around in a truck, like an old bread truck,
Yeah.
maybe once or twice a week. So you need to know what's available.
That might be
Yeah,
different.
you do, right.
And I'm sure it's like that in other small towns.
And then you'll find places that won't take cash or places that won't take a credit card, so you have to be flexible. And Tom, and some of these are cards that you don't have to tell them anymore that you're traveling. I mean, I used to religiously, every time I would be going out of the country, I would call each of my credit cards and tell them where I was going and what I was doing. And in the last 2 years, I've called like Bank America, Wells Fargo, and they say, no, you don't need to do that anymore. Makes me nervous, because I have been places in the past where my card's gotten stopped because until you call the credit card company and say, no, it's me, I'm over in this country. I told you that, but
That's very interesting
sometimes
to
it's
get.
hard to get a hold of them. That brings up another topic. When I take a copy of my credit cards and my passport before I go, I take a copy of the backside too with the phone numbers. So that I have the numbers to call if something happens to my card, or you take a picture of it. But like I say, if I do it digitally, I still like to have the hard copy with me.
And the fraud that we talk about a lot here at the center and challenges, it's interesting that the idea of an unusual location would not trigger credit cards anymore the way that they are triggered by things like online purchases, etc.
Yeah.
This has been extremely interesting and informative. I'm wondering if anybody has any final thoughts about things that they wish we'd said, or it sounds like, I mean, we started out with a lot of discussion about how wonderful it can be to combine some structure and some free time. And the last sort of area that we've been talking about are hurdles and bumps and difficulties and challenges. But obviously, since you all love to travel, there are more pluses than minuses in the experience.
Absolutely. And it looks like all the people here, are travelers, so we're preaching to the choir.
We've all suffered a lot, yeah. Over in when we flew to Carcassonne in France, and when we got there late. We didn't realize that they had very few taxis. We had a tough time getting a taxi, and then when we got to the hotel, even though we had a guaranteed reservation, they had already sold a room.
Well, what happened was they were having a big retreat in the whole city. I mean, I think it was an airlines or, there were
but-
so many more people in the town than usual. And she could get rid of our room right away. So she just wanted, the only reason we got into the inn is somebody was coming out. Otherwise, they would never have answered the door for us. And we snuck in.
We
And
went
then
in.
she didn't know what to do with us.
And I said, we're not leaving. You're going to get us something either here or somewhere else. So
And that brings up a point. If you're you're gonna be late.
Yeah, let them know,
try
yeah.
If you can,
Well, we were
contact the
actually,
hotel.
Jeannette, we were with the walking group, and they were already there. And
They were out to dinner.
you think they would have said something, but they didn't.
Right,
But there was,
that's hard. But sometimes it's hard to contact when you're traveling, it's hard to
Yeah.
contact the hotel that you're at.
those are things you never expect. You got
Right.
a reservation. you know.
And that reminds me to tell people that you should make sure all of your apps, the travel apps, are up to date. And make sure that you have an Uber app on there. Because when I was in South Africa this past year, we Ubered everywhere. And it was so easy to do. And that's what they used Uber so much in South Africa rather than
Hey,
taxis.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
That if you don't have that app there, it's
yeah, that's really great.
it made it so easy. Plus it was so cheap.
One other thing that happened in France, we were in Paris and we were going to Geneva and we were taking the train. We bought the train ticket, the Gare du Nord, there's like 4 corners where they have switches. Well, they sold me the ticket, but didn't tell me I was not at the right corner.
wrong.
And we're looking and looking, where the hell are we? We didn't. Finally, somebody said, "Where are you going?" And you got to be at the other station. So you need to really know.
That's why I was
That's-
saying, make sure you check
Where
the
you're at,
station that
I
you're
mean,
coming
if
in
they're
and
not-
out of,
in
because
France, they're not real
it's
helpful.
different.
Yeah,
So-
well, that's why you check for sure.
Right, and before
Reed,
we
I
hang
wanna-
up, Reed, one thing I forgot to say, one of the best apps that my friend and I found when we were traveling was Rome to Rio. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's Rome to number 2 Rio. So if you're in a city, if you're traveling between different cities or different countries or just different places in a city, you pull that app up, you put in where you are, where you're going, and it will tell you the best way to get there. It'll give you train information, plane information, bus information. It's not infallible, but it, for the most part, works really well.
Lois, you had a little something.
I did. I just wondered if the senior center had any kind of a travel group or, for people that like us that like to travel a lot to share tips, or if you guys meet on occasion.
We have
don't, do
we have people who are interested in travel. Colleen Edwards is here usually every Tuesday and is willing to talk about it. So that's an informal time to try to get folks together. We also have regular visits from Colette, which is a travel company that has a special emphasis on seniors. And a benefit for us is that they also they treat us as a agency. So if you were to travel on a Colette trip that you found usable, we get a little bonus back from that. So you're supporting the senior center in your travel. And often, because we promote them here, you'll find other people who are going the same place. So I'd look for opportunities to meet people by looking at those Colette trips that are coming up, because you can then have a cup of coffee afterwards, after we have a presentation, or stop by on a Tuesday when Colleen is here. But if there is an interest, let us know. We're happy to try to support getting together with like-minded people on all kinds of topics. Jamie.
Yeah, when Lena spoke to Jeanette and I initially about talking about traveling, and I think it was Dorothy Foster that gave our names to her. I thought initially that that's what that they were thinking of doing, maybe getting a sort of like having a travel group, like a book
Right.
club, you know, a little travel club, so that you can talk about places you've been, and people say, oh, I'm thinking I'd love to go to Antarctica. Is anybody interested? That sort of thing. But we don't, but I'm interested in that. So
The other
maybe
thing that is a way to share your travel experience and meet other travelers is Sam Bartleson once a month hosts the Adventures in Travel program on a Wednesday in the afternoon. Cindy McGregor just this week talked about her trip to Australia with Road Scholar, and he's always looking for people who are willing to share their travel. So if there's a upcoming destination that you are interested in, the upcoming weeks and months are posted in the splash and on the pages on the wall here in the hallway. Make sure to attend one of those Adventures in Travel sessions.
I just want to say I've been to a couple of those and they're excellent, and it's really worthwhile. I would tell you one last thing. When we were going back from France, we had to change our ticket and leave early, and we were up in a town up in northern France near Geneva, so it was Annecy, and we went into the travel agency there, and asked it to get a ticket. We needed to go back to Ohio. She said, they won't sell me a ticket, but I can see that there are tickets available. So what I suggest you do is go up to Geneva, which was like maybe 1 or 2 hour bus ride from there. So we hopped on a bus, went to Geneva, bought our tickets there. We ended up with first class seats, paid a regular price. They were like the last 2 seats on the plane. So there's sometimes there's another way to do things. Don't give up. Persist.
I really want to thank Jeannette and Jamie for doing the legwork to put together this program. And thank you to Lois and Tom and Marcia for adding your experiences. And thank you to Dorothy Foster for suggesting this. And yeah, we have lots of stuff coming up. And if you have suggestions for topics for something to talk about, feel free to send a note to me or info@biseniorcenter.org.